Hi, this is Scott with Movie Nerds, and we're very happy today to be joined by Nick Stoller, director of Bros. So first off, congratulations on the film. It was fantastic. The audience loved it. I'm really curious, how did you get involved? So obviously writing and directing.
It's actually a project originated with me. So
yeah, cool.
I'd worked with Billy Eichner I knew him from Billy on the Street.
Yep.
I cast him in Neighbors 2, and then I cast him in the show called Friends from College
Yep.
that I created with my wife, and he was really good actor. I didn't realize what a good actor he was, and I've discovered he was an excellent actor in that show. And then we screened the first episode of that in a movie theater, and every time he was on screen, the audience exploded, and I was like, oh, he's a movie star. And so I contacted him and was like, would you want to build kind of romantic comedy around you and kind of a comedy vehicle for you? And he was into the idea, so we started there.
Awesome, that's great. Yeah, he's very funny. My wife thought he was a fantastic singer as well. That was the one thing.
He's a beautiful, he has a beautiful voice, yeah.
The song at the end was awesome.
Yeah.
So there's a scene early on in the film where the studio kind of asks Billy's character to come in and pitch a gay romantic comedy.
Yeah.
How meta was that for you guys? And I'm more curious, like, was this a project that the studio was very hands-on with, or would that give you guys the creative freedom to kind of do what you want?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of meta-ness, we use that to kind of explain the premise of the movie and to explain Billy's character. I'm not a very meta director. I tend to be pretty earnest and sincere and but we felt like this is a funny way to kind of get across his point of view and get across like who he is as a person. In terms of the studio, I mean, I've directed all my live action movies at Universal. Yep. I love working for them or with them or whatever. They are really hands-off. They trust the comedy. The notes they give are kind of basic studio notes, like the ending isn't good enough or not satisfying enough, or you need a turn in the third act, that sort of notes.
Sure.
But in terms of specifics, they're just like, you guys get it, you know how to make comedy. They're not that involved in that part of it. So.
That's awesome. And so obviously Judd Apatow, you've worked with him quite a significant amount through your career. I imagine over the years he maybe not be as hands-on anymore. Or what kind of input does he have onto the projects that you work on? Yeah,
I mean, we brought Judd in after we'd kind of figured out the story. He's been a mentor figure of mine, and he's now just a friend, and so he, it's a few things. The studio, like everyone understands what the movie is when he's a producer on it, and particularly when I'm directing it, you get the world kind of get. If you're in comedy, you get what it is. And he's also just creatively really helpful in terms of. It's kind of like what an editor does with a book, where he just gets very good at having a macro view of the film and being like, your movie's about this, and you have to make sure you're always focused on this thing. He's also great at casting. He's great at, anytime I need some advice, I would ask him. But he kind of has a great macro view of stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. Have you ever had to say no to anything that he suggested, or?
Oh yeah, all the time. And he's very that's the other thing. He's very respectful. He's awesome. Like, you're the director, you guys are writing it, it's your guys' thing. So if I'm like, no, he's like, yeah, okay, it's your thing. So he's very respectful.
So we saw the film last night, huge audience reaction, and that's something that I've always loved about the theatrical experience is going in there, just having people around you. That laughter is infectious. I'm curious, throughout your life, is there any kind of outstanding comedy moments that you've been in the theater loving a film with an audience?
Yeah, I mean, 2 when I was a kid. One was when I saw the first Naked Gun.
Yep.
I was like, what is this? Like, it changed, it like rewired my brain. Like, couldn't stop laughing. The second one was obviously the hair gel sequence, and There's Something About Mary.
Yeah.
That whole sequence, like, couldn't stop laughing. And kind of also, I was like, I started to kind of subconsciously see how you put together a set piece when I saw that
Yeah,
film,
that's awesome.
And
I feel like moments like that one, specifically the hair gel, is kind of almost a pivot point to more kind of mature and laugh out loud comedy moments. I think that I think you look post that and films kind of were much more adult, much more just.
Yeah, it kind of showed that you could create these set pieces that everyone would talk about, and that it would really tear the house down.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. So you've kind of stuck with comedy for the most part of your career. Yeah. What kind of keeps you coming back to that?
I mean, it's how I see the world. Yeah. I think whenever I see a very dramatic movie that's super dramatic and dark, and I call bullshit on it. I'm like, that's not the way the world is. Yeah. Like when something very weird, when something bad or dark or strange happens in my life, it's always a little funny, and there's always something strange happening in the background of it, and so that to me is just how I see the world. It's not so. And then I also like to make people laugh. It's just been I've been obsessed with comedy ever since I can remember.
Yeah. So obviously you co-wrote this film. You're also directing it. How do you bring those skills together, or those processes, are they different for you, or do you separate them out, or? When
I'm writing for someone else, like when I'm writing not to direct, it's pretty different. you're working for someone, you're working for the director, you're working a little bit more for the studio, but really for the director if it's a movie. When I'm writing to direct myself, I have to be much more inside the project. I mean, I work really hard no matter what the thing is, but I'm much more inside it. I'm way more anxious that it be really good. And I'm more visualizing what it's going to look like and what's going to be happening in terms of how the camera's going to move and all of that. So I think it is pretty different. But when I'm writing and directing something, I don't separate the two. It's not, once you go into production, it's very different than writing. It's a very different part. But the fantastic thing about directing is it's kind of the entire creative experience of making a movie.
Yeah, awesome. You've been around for close to 15 years.
I know, it's weird. I was described as a comedy veteran recently, and I was like, oh, Jesus, I'm getting old.
And that's something I will touch on in a sec, but I'm kind of curious, who are the biggest comedy influences for yourself?
I mean, it's, Woody Allen, Nora Ephron, Rob Reiner, James Brooks.
Yep.
Saturday Night Live, Cheers.
I don't know, Cheers,
But really, it's those movies. It's When Harry Met Sally I watch once a year. Annie Hall I watch once a year. I watch these movies over and over again. Broadcast News I watch all the time. Right. Yeah, it's I love big-hearted comedies. As much as I love There's Something About Mary, that's not really the kind of movies I like to make tend to be more I try to make slightly emotionally complex. Yeah. Like movies where you're like laughing and then suddenly you're tearing up a little bit and it's confusing.
And I think that, but I think that's what audiences dig. Like if I think about some of the films that you've directed that I've seen with audiences like Sarah Marshall and whatnot, they absolutely eat it up, but it's not just the straight comedy elements. It is that romantic comedy kind of components and the real life emotion that I think that your characters bring. So credit to you, sir.
Thanks.
It's really great.
I think the best comedies are almost all comedies are dramas essentially. They're structured like dramas. And it's true of all when Get Him to the Greek is about addiction. That entire movie is about addiction, and it's dark and sad at the center of it, but it's very, very funny if you're not paying attention to that.
Yeah.
So,
to finish us off, I kind of want to ask you, obviously, not to give yourself a big head, but I think you've been one of the biggest comedy kind of legends in the last 15 years, and you've worked on a fantastic set of things. So I kind of just want to throw some projects at you and just kind of get one line of memory from of things that you worked on. So the first one is something that's near and dear to my heart, which is Undeclared.
Oh, really? Oh, nice. Yeah. I was pretty close to just out of college. So that was a fantastic experience. It's where I learned a lot about how to write. Judd became my mentor on that show. I met Seth Rogen on that show. He was 18. He was a writer. We shared an office. It was a fantastic experience.
Yeah, love that one. Forgetting Sarah Marshall?
It was to get to shoot in Hawaii was an incredible experience. I was terrified because it was my first movie and I didn't really understand basic movie making things, but Jason Segel was the best partner I could ask for, and it was a really cool experience.
Yeah, cool. Now, next one, you got to write for Kermit, the Muppets.
The Muppets, I wrote that for James Bobin, who directed it. I'm actually seeing him on the next stop of the tour.
Awesome.
And I wrote that with Jason Segel. And, Jason was obsessed with puppets. Like the Dracula musical is a real thing he wanted to do. And we worked on that for years, and it was I pinched myself as I was working on it. Walking on the set and seeing all the Muppets and seeing how that whole thing is put together was fantastic.
Yeah, perfect. Animation Storks?
That was just an incredible experience. That movie is, not to get too personal, is really, my wife and I had some struggles having kids, and that movie is really all about that, and to get to make an animated movie from start to finish, also from a creative standpoint, forced me to just think visually, and I think it really strengthened those muscles in my brain in terms of thinking purely visually, because you're not shooting with a camera, you're like drawing, or you're having other people draw stuff, and so that, just from a creative standpoint, was really fulfilling and challenging, but great.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Well, congratulations. Thank you very much. Congratulations on Bros. Fantastic film. Audience loved it.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Cool, thanks. I'm so glad you dug it. Yeah.
Oh my God, do you guys remember Straight People?
Yeah, they had a nice run.